the man who called so many remarkable matches at the U.S. Open, including a 5-set tiebreak, the man who puts the team, if you will, not only in the winner of the U.S. Open, but the team player, who not only called all that action over the weekend for ESPN, but is calling tonight's game, along with Kirk Herbstreit and Maria Taylor, as he always does for college football, but tonight's NFL game between the Giants and the Steelers, my friend Chris Fowler here on the show. How are you, Chris?
I'm staring out the window at MetLife Stadium across the turnpike here, contemplating what comes next. I'm well. It's
exciting.
Kind of surreal.
Yep.
But it says very 2020. You know, empty but intense Arthur Ashe Stadium, empty but intense MetLife Stadium the next night. Why not?
Now, I was going to say to you, you're one of the few announcers who were calling a Week 1 NFL game who already knows what it's like to call an intense affair in front of hardly anybody. I mean, what was that like sitting in Arthur Ashe the last couple weeks? Certainly over the weekend.
You could overuse the word surreal. Now, bizarre to see someone like Serena on the court with 0 fans, and to see a ghostly empty place for the men's final. But I tell you what I've noticed in the tennis is what I've seen in the NBA playoffs, certainly the NHL playoffs. I haven't had a huge sample of games in the NFL. I watched a couple, but the on-field or on-court intensity is not diminished one iota.
That's
in
right.
fact, it's almost easier to put the focus on that. I think fans who watch football games, you're not going to get those crowd shots. You're not going to get the roar, but you're going to get, I think, a more intense focus on the participants and the sounds of it. I'm not trying to sell fanless football. I can't wait till crowds get back in it, but in trying to adapt and adjust and see what's different. Like in tennis, we were able to just really focus in on. You could hear the players breathing on the court. It was just very weird. But what I noticed was they competed just as hard. They wanted to win just as badly. They didn't get anything back from the crowd, but they didn't need it. And in that case, I don't think NFL players are going to need it either.
Now, ESPN did not pipe in whistles, right, for bad line calls during the U.S. Open. That they did not do that, right? The same we're hearing stuff for the NFL.
I think humans are going to be endangered species when it comes to calling lines at a lot of major tournaments. They're going to go to pure technology right off the bat and do away with the challenge system and just let the machines do it. That's probably the future.
Well, I mean, it's safer if Djokovic is on the court too, Chris, right?
Wow.
Is that wrong? Is it too soon?
Too
soon, Chris?
Too soon.
I mean, she's recovered, thankfully, the lineswoman that he hit in the Adam's apple. But
oh, my word.
No, I think I did a video afterwards, and I don't know how this football season or the rest of the sports calendar is going to play out. You guys are talking about some twists and turns in the playoffs.
Right.
I think buckle up. We're going to see unpredictable stuff that's hard to expect and hard to explain to people because it's just 2020, man, and nothing is normal. I think that you're going to have unlikely outcomes, and I think it's going to be a serious mental test in the NFL as the season goes on. Guys, any sport, guys who are opting in now, you're going to still be opting in when your team's like 3-6. I mean, I hope it's a positive statement about the culture of these teams so they can keep guys together because we're all going through stuff in our own way. But it's just as it's a challenging, tough year on the planet, it's going to be the same in the sports landscape.
So let me ask you.
Not to get too deep.
No, Chris.
That's what I feel.
Come on, Chris. It's not deep. I mean, look, we're all trying to figure stuff out. You know, I'm waking up every day checking the air index to see if it's healthy for my kids to go out. You know, on their PE classes that they have in quotes during their online learning. I mean, it's a crazy world we're living in right now. Chris Fowler joining me here. Getting set to call the Monday Nighter between the Giants and the Steelers. And before we get to that, what do you know about your college football schedule as you're currently sitting here right now? What do you know about that?
It's funky. I mean, I think, the Big Ten is going to have their big decision about whether or not they're going to try to crank things up. It's still possible they could crank things up much sooner than people expect and try to squeeze a season in there. They could somehow put them in position to be in the playoff. I mean, it seems crazy given what the announcement that they made, but that's in flux. Your Wolverines may yet take the field sooner than you'd expect. But I'm not breaking a story. That's just kind of that's potentially what could happen. But besides that, the games we know that are going to happen, there's a few leagues that are up and running. The SEC gets up and running in a couple of weeks, but the schedule is very much up in the air.
So
Not typical.
No, that's the reason why. Look, I know. Again, you've had your head and your voice in the game at U.S. Open tennis, and then you got to turn around and get ready for an NFL game tonight. That's why I asked you about your schedule, because do you know like what your next? I know that's kind of crazy to ask this of somebody.
I wish they could hit the tape and collapse after 2 weeks plus in the bubble over there, and this challenge tonight. But no, we're back Miami at Louisville Saturday as an ACC game. That is the first game, and then we're sort of off and running after that. It'll be a mixed bag, but I'm just glad to be calling games, man.
I bet. So. I know that. I know. We spoke over the summer, and we're like, I don't know, NFL, and now here you are coming off of a successful U.S. Open tournament, getting set to call Monday Night Football between the Giants and the Steelers. How did you prepare for this, doing all that, what you've done? Like, walk me through it, Chris.
Right down to the first tee. I mean, it'll be it's a lot, man. You know the amount of information at your disposal. I thought we got a lot of it in college. It's beyond in the NFL. So you're sifting and sorting and discarding and figuring out how not to smother a telecast. I mean, my tendency probably is to over-prepare and overplay, so I'll try to guard against that tonight. But it's been a process over the month. You try to like get ready for it. But then what I didn't realize, Rich, there's about half the players on an NFL board, right? So it should be easier.
Right.
But the fluidity of the rosters right down to the last minute you don't have that in college, right? You don't sign a dude who's on the field 5 days later starting against the Steelers. The Giants roster in particular, as you probably know, is just very fluid, but there's so many new faces. And so I try to get ready, but it's going to take every minute I've got, and then we're just going to have it's sort of a one-off. It's the one game we'll do this year, and it's really cool for me to see guys that I got to know in college, and you follow them through that draft night, and you're proud of what they did in a detached way, but you feel like you get to know them, and so it's really cool to reconnect with guys like T.J. Watt and Dexter Lawrence and Jabril Peppers and Saquon Barkley. I mean, these are guys that we got to know pretty well. And now these guys talk as very mature men and veterans of the league. It's Kirk and I both feel the same way, and Maria as well. It's fun. We're going to enjoy that aspect of it tonight.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, did you go back to some of your Saquon notes from Penn State games, or even like your college game day, maybe with Miami of Ohio on the schedule with Big Ben from 2003? Like, did you go into your archives in prep for tonight?
Ben was laughing. Ben said he was more nervous for this game tonight because obviously missing last year and not wanting to let the teammates down than he has been since the MAC championship game, which he was in college, which Kirk, I think, was broadcasting. So we were having a laugh about that. But no, I think I would be idiotic to sit there and start spinning old tales about dudes, what they did in college. I mean, these guys are pros. Our audience expects us to refer to them as pro football players. I mean, it's inevitable that we're going to have an anecdote or two because I think it's interesting, but we're not going to overdo that for sure.
Did you Zoom with Joe Judge in between U.S. Open tennis matches? Did you do something like that, Chris?
My day yesterday was Zoomed with the Giant players in the morning before I left for the stadium. Yeah. Set up in the booth before the final for the Joe Judge Zoom. Called the final. During the match, the Steelers Zooms were recorded. Unfortunately, I couldn't be a part of that. But then went home at night after the final, tried to decompress and listen to all the Zoom calls from Tomlin, Ben, Connor, all the Pittsburgh players. It was quite a day, I promise you.
Well, and of course, as you're trying to prepare for Monday night, Chris, you get the first U.S. Open champion in 71 years to come from the first two sets down, like Team did. So you got that going for you.
Exactly. I'm thinking when it's like 2 sets to low, 4-all, Zverev with 6 points from winning, I think, okay, this is going to be a crap final. It's going to be remembered as a bad final, but at least I'll have a few more hours to prep. But you can't get caught. 3 hours later, this is a pretty damn memorable final, and I just lost 3 hours. But, listen, you want to always call great matches.
Of course.
When the final of a tournament is a dud, it's just poor punctuation for the event. There's so much went into staging this U.S. Open. I mean, against all odds, it actually came off really well. People did not get infected. The safety record was really good. I'm glad we got a final that, if not aesthetically pleasing throughout, at least was dramatic at the end, and two guys who could barely walk or stand up kind of emptying the bucket. That's kind of cool to see.
Chris Fowler, a couple more minutes left with Chris before he goes into MetLife and calls the Giants and the Steelers tonight. What a fun matchup that's going to be, and I can't wait to sit down and watch it.
I hope so. I hope the Giants can hang with them, frankly. I have some concerns, but if we get a great game, that's a bonus.
Well, I mean, again, and seeing what Big Ben looks like, Chris, obviously that is a monster storyline for 2020. If the Big Ben that we have come to know as a first ballot surefire Hall of Famer shows up and starts winging it around, and Juju Smith-Schuster from 2018 starts materializing on the screen, then we may have a different AFC that we're talking about. That's what we're talking about there.
Yeah, I know everybody's given the division of Baltimore, but a lot of folks at Kirk and others who have been diving into Pittsburgh, if exactly what you said happens, they're not only a surefire playoff team. A lot of people think they can go deep in the playoffs. But we'll see. It'll be fun to watch tonight for sure.
Certainly. And then I guess last one for you, your pod that's dropping soon. Let's talk about that. I know quite a bit about it since I'm on the first one that you are producing with Jennifer, your lovely, fantastic better half. I give you the floor on this, Chris.
You're part of a very flattering 4x1 relay.
Okay.
Willie Geist, Maria Taylor, you, and then Jeremy Schaap running the anchor leg. I don't know what we were thinking. I mean, we had 4 great storytellers. It's a ton of content. We didn't edit out too much of it, but it is like an hour. It's a double album. But it's really an interesting look. You guys were all great. It's about talking to people, which is the essence of a podcast. And it's not going to be a sports pod. It's different topics that kind of interest me, and I hope others. But you guys were all great. And so we just said, let's just debut with the double album. I think people will enjoy the stories, and I very appreciate you giving your time to it.
Come on, Chris.
It'll be out possibly slightly delayed. There's more to this than I thought. I'm a newbie at this thing.
Okay.
But certainly by midweek, wherever you find your podcasts, it should be dropped or released or whatever they do with the podcast.
What's the name of it? What are we looking for? What's the
Who you got? We virtually found out that not in the sports context.
Yes.
You get that annoying question. I'm sure you get that annoying question. John Madden got that question when I first met him. I was shadowing him as an eager young college kid, and people, hey John, who you got? And I saw how grumpy he got when he got that question. and you get it all the time, but this is in relation to who we got in terms of guests. So every podcast name is taken by 3 other podcasts out there. If you didn't know that, you try to come up with something that hasn't been used. And since 77% of Americans have a podcast, it's sort of like everything is taken. But I mean, just Fowler podcast. It's easy to find out.
Okay, all right. So I enjoyed the chat. It is a great idea where you talk to people who talk to people for a living, and you have a conversation about having a conversation. And when things go a little bit awry, when they shake, and I know you told the story on Dan's show. When you appeared last week right here on Peacock, but you do have to enlighten my viewers because you enlightened me to this story that you told about Burt Reynolds. I want to give you the floor here, Chris, to finish up strong.
I'll do the truncated version because I don't want to tell a long
this is
story
great, Chris.
at your time. But no, it basically is it ended up with a 70-something-year-old Burt Reynolds wanting to punch my lights out on the field where he used to run around as a Seminole player. But it began backstage at Radio City, at least for me.
Mm-hmm.
That was my first encounter with Burt. I knew him a little bit because he's Lee Corso's roommate at FSU, and so he's been around a little bit. He's a football fan and a booster of the program, the late legend. But yeah, I'm walking backstage to the ESPYs. I had finished presenting. I'm full of myself. It was pretty exciting to be on stage at Radio City. And I'm walking through the dark. There's the curtains and the pulleys backstage. And I feel this sharp punch to my left shoulder. I look out, and it's Burt Reynolds. Hey, Burt, don't you give me that. He's got a finger in my face. And we talked in the pod. It's interesting. You tell a very funny, actually a couple of funny mistaken identity stories.
Yep.
This was mine. I said nothing to offend Burt. I swear I said nothing in my life. Why would I talk about Burt Reynolds' divorce with Lonnie Anderson? But he was convinced that I had said something, and I kicked him when he was down, and now he was going to punch me when I wasn't expecting it. And we started this bizarre feud. And the reason why it's in the pod is because he wouldn't be interviewed by me. It's an interview that didn't happen because he would not sit on the game day set. So he put him on a little side set where he and Lee could kibitz. But, yeah, it was a weird situation. Now I'll never know the answer to it because I asked Corso, please ask your friend why he hates me, why he thinks I said something that was the worst thing he'd ever heard. And Lee just shook his head and smiled. That's Bert. I have no idea. So the mystery will go on forever. I'll never know why he punched me and wanted to. He wanted to throw down on the sidelines of Bill Campbell Stadium.
Fantastic.
And he said, "You don't want to fight a 70-year-old man." He said, "No, Bert, I do not." As I said to you, that's a no-win. Okay?
Yes, of course.
You either punch a legend and your career is over. You might go to jail and you might not get out of there alive because they love Burt Reynolds, or a septuagenarian kicks your ass.
Ask Pedro Martinez about Don Zimmer.
And that's not a win. There's no good situation there. So
it's a great pod, man.
I backed away and let him blow off steam, and I went to the other side of the field to watch the game. And I still have no idea why he was mad. So.
And if anybody, as somebody who's known you for as long as I've known you, Chris, you could not care less about the stuff like Burt Reynolds and Lonnie Anderson and their divorce. Like that.
I don't know how that would have come up on game day, Rich. I just don't think that in between breaking down the day's games that would have come up. But
Chris,
it did. And
Chris,
of all the people out there that may have said something, I don't know who he thought I was. As I told you, maybe it was you. Maybe you said something.
It could have been. I don't think
so.
so.
At you.
I don't think so. I don't think so. But that might have. Maybe that's what cost me my appearance in Cannonball Run 3. I didn't know if that might have been.
Maybe it was Billy Bush when he did the entertainment show. I don't know.
Could have
that's
been.
the kind of show to talk about that.
Exactly.
Not a football show.
But
anyway.
we're talking about it on the Fowler podcast that'll be dropping later on this week. I'm thrilled about that. And Susie and I, with the kids, could not be more excited to settle in to watch the game with you calling it tonight. And I know you're talked out. I really appreciate you spending all this time talking with me on a big day. Thank you.
No, you got me fired up. I think it's there's some good storylines. I hope the game's good, and then it's back to the Saturday night battles in the college gridiron.
I look forward to a full season on that front too, Chris. Thanks for the call. Best to Jennifer. Take care.
Take care, Rich. Thanks.
You
Hi,
bet.
Susie.
You got it. That's Chris Fowler. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.